This isn't a story about what actually happened. It's about what almost did and how that one moment messed with everything I thought I knew about myself, my marriage, and the people I thought I could trust. He walked in at the worst possible time, not while anything bad was happening. No, that would have been easier. He walked in right after the truth came out, right after I said something I'd been holding in for years. Something I didn't even know I needed to say until it was already out there. You ever had that moment where the air shifts, where someone looks at you and you feel seen in a way that's terrifying, like they're looking straight through the life you built, the titles, the routines, and straight into you? And for just a second, you look back and something clicks that shouldn't. Let me ask you this and be honest. Have you ever almost done something that would have destroyed everything, like you didn't actually do it, but just thinking about it still keeps you up at night? Drop a comment. I want to hear yours because trust me, more people have been in that space than you think. If this hits you even a little, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and hit that bell. I've got more real stories coming, and around here we talk about the stuff people are usually too scared to admit. This one starts with a storm, a late-night visit, and a truth I never planned to say out loud. Let me take you back a bit. My name's Christine Avery. I'm 32, I've got two amazing little boys, and once upon a time, I used to write, like really write, short stories, essays, even started a blog that got a little attention back in the day, but now, most days the only thing I write is the grocery list, or a reminder to buy more goldfish crackers. Somewhere along the line between diaper changes, dishes, and mommy, where's my other shoe, I stopped showing up for myself, and the worst part, no one noticed. Not even Sergio, my husband. Now before anyone jumps in the comments like, ugh, typical husband, let me just say this, he's not a bad guy. Sergio Spencer is steady, reliable, smart. He's the kind of man who never forgets to pay the mortgage early and always keeps gas in my car. But he's also somewhere else all the time, distant. He works long hours as an accountant, comes home tired, eats dinner in silence, and when I try to talk about how I'm feeling, it's like I'm speaking a language he doesn't understand anymore, or maybe doesn't want to. I know he loves us, I know he's trying, but sometimes love isn't loud enough to cover the silence growing between two people. And what no one sees, not even Sergio, is that behind all my managing, multitasking, and making it look like I have it together, I feel invisible. Not just to him, to myself. I used to feel wanted, heard, like someone with a voice. Now I feel like background noise in my own life. And then, there's Everett. Now that name probably raised some eyebrows. Yeah, Everett Moran. Sergio's younger half-brother. He's kind of the opposite of Sergio in every way. Creative, emotionally open, easy to talk to. He shows up randomly with groceries just because, offers to help fix the sink, without being asked, plays with the kids like they're his own. He's been around for years, so none of it felt weird. Until one day, it did. He's divorced. Still trying to figure out what went wrong in his own marriage, and honest, I think that's what makes him dangerous. Not in a bad way, but in a I see you because I've been there too kind of way. And that's the part that caught me off guard. Because when someone looks at you like they actually see you, not just the version you show the world, it hits different. Especially when you've been starving for that kind of attention without even realizing it. Everett never said anything inappropriate. Not at first, but he noticed things Sergio didn't. Like the way I cut my hair shorter after the baby, just trying to feel human again, or how I wear the same stretched-out sweatshirt every day, because I'm too tired to try anymore. And when he'd say things like, you used to love writing, why'd you stop? It wasn't judgmental, it was curious. Like he remembered something I forgot about myself. And yeah, maybe that was the first sign. Not the words, but how much they meant to me. I wasn't looking for anything, I wasn't planning anything. But when you feel unseen for long enough, sometimes just being noticed can light a fire you weren't ready for. And that fire, it started slow, just a flicker. But we both knew it was there. We'd sneak out just to go watch the stars. Stay up late binging bad TV shows and laughing until we cried. He used to write me little notes and leave them on my car windshield. I'd save every single one. We were that couple. the you guys are perfect together couple. But somewhere between the wedding and the mortgage and the second baby, we stopped talking unless it was about who's picking up what from Target, or who forgot to take the chicken out of the freezer. And it's not like we had some huge blowout fight. There was no dramatic moment. It was more like a slow leak. We didn't lose love. We just misplaced it. Under laundry piles, work deadlines, grocery lists, and preschool registration forms. Now, we barely touch. We don't go on dates. I can't remember the last time he looked at me the way he used to. Honestly, I don't think I've looked at myself that way in years. There was this one night not too long ago when I was making dinner, pasta. Again, kids were screaming in the other room, and Sergio was sitting at the table scrolling on his phone. I asked him something, just something simple. Do you want me to pack you lunch for tomorrow? He didn't even look up, just said, yeah, whatever. That's it. No eye contact. No thank you. Just a grunt and a tap on the screen. I stood there, spoon in one hand, staring at him, not mad, not even surprised. Just, no. Later that night, after everyone was asleep, I sat on the floor of our bathroom with my old journal. I hadn't written in it in almost a year. I opened to a blank page and scribbled the question that had been circling my head for weeks. Does he even know who I am anymore? I stared at that line for a long time, and then the scarier thought hit me. Do I? And yeah, that's when things with Everett started feeling different. It wasn't sudden, it wasn't scandalous, it started in the spaces where Sergio stopped showing up. Everett would ask how my day was, like really ask. He'd remember details, things I mentioned in passing. Once I told him I missed writing, and a few days later he left a notebook on my porch with a sticky note that said, "You still have something to say." Sergio hadn't said anything like that to me in years, and before I even realized it, I found myself waiting for Everett to come by, not because I wanted anything to happen, but because with him I felt like a person again, not just someone's wife, or someone's mom, or someone holding the house together by dental floss and coffee. It was small at first, but looking back now, that's when the line started to blur, the day it really started to shift. Sergio had just left town for a 3-day business trip. He kissed the boys goodbye, gave me a distracted, "See you Thursday," and was out the door before I could even ask if he packed the charger for his work laptop. Typical. A few hours later I realized I was the one who forgot something. My own laptop charger. I'd left it at my dad's cabin after spending the weekend there with the kids. And because life likes to add drama to the ordinary, it was pouring outside, like movie scene, thunder rumbling, windows fogged kind of rain. I wasn't even going to bother going out, and I figured I'd just let it die and go a few days without screen time. But then my phone buzzed. Everett. He offered to pick it up for me, said he was heading that way anyway, and didn't mind swinging by. I told myself it was no big deal, he's family, he's always been around, it's fine. But when he showed up at the cabin, wet hair dripping from the rain, charger in hand and a crooked smile on his face, it didn't feel fine, it felt complicated. The cabin was warm, quiet, peaceful, the kind of place where the world feels muted. He said he couldn't stay long, but then he did. We sat on the couch, just talking. Started with small stuff, old stories, family memories. He reminded me of a camping trip we all went on years ago. I had completely forgotten about it. He laughed, remembering how I tripped over a rock and blamed it on Serge. I laughed too, really laughed for the first time in weeks. That kind of laugh that makes your shoulders drop and your chest feel lighter, even just for a second. At one point I reached down to grab my charger and he noticed the bracelet on my wrist. "This is still your favorite one?" he asked. I blinked. "You remember this? You got it the summer after college. You wore it to that barbecue at your dad's. You were so excited about getting your first writing gig." I didn't even know I remembered all that. Sergio hadn't noticed that bracelet in I don't even know how long. But Everett? He remembered. And right then, I felt something shift. Not because he said anything suggestive, not because he made a move, but because he saw not the version of me I show everyone now. The tired mom, the wife holding things together. He saw the girl I used to be, and for a second, she came back. There was this silence between us. Not awkward, heavy. A pause that felt like it was holding its breath. I should have said something, changed the subject. But I didn't. And neither did he. And in that moment, We both knew. This wasn't just a friendly chat in the rain. This was the start of something neither of us meant to let happen. But now that it had started, it was going to be harder than either of us wanted to admit to stop it. The rain outside didn't let up. It just kept falling steady and loud against the cabin windows. That kind of storm that feels like it's trying to say something. We were still sitting there, me and Everett, not close but not far enough either. There was a quiet between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was waiting. He asked if I wanted some wine. I said yes, even though I probably shouldn't have. It wasn't about the wine. It was about slowing down a moment I didn't want to name. We sat sipping slowly, the fire throwing soft shadows across the room. It felt like time was pressing pause on everything else. Then he said it, out of nowhere, his voice barely louder than the rain. There was a time I thought you and I might have been something. I buried that for the family's sake. I didn't say anything. My stomach dropped, like I'd missed a step on the stairs. He didn't look at me right away. He just stared into his glass, like he was ashamed, like he'd finally let something slip he'd been holding in for years. But the thing is, I wasn't shocked. Not really. Some part of me had always known. And worse, some part of me had wondered the same thing. I turned to him. Slowly, my voice cracked a little, but I said it anyway. I felt it too, back then. I just thought it was something I made up in my head. There was a stillness after that. No one moved. We weren't touching, but the pull was there, like the gravity between us had changed. I don't know how long we sat there. Could have been 30 seconds. Could have been 10 minutes. Just staring. Just breathing. Then he said it. And I swear I felt it in my spine. I've never stopped wondering what it might have been like. And me. I whispered something I'll never forget. Me too. It was the truth. Ugly. Raw. Terrifying. But honest. That one moment just saying it out loud changed the air. It cracked something wide open that we'd both tried to seal shut years ago. No kiss. No touch. Just two people holding a truth between them that was heavier than either of us expected. I looked at him, and he looked at me, and we both knew. We were standing right on the edge of a line that shouldn't be crossed, and part of us didn't care, but part of knew it wouldn't just be us who paid the price. That moment wasn't physical, but it was real, and real is what makes it dangerous. The room was quiet. Too quiet, just the crackle of the fire and the rain, pounding like a heartbeat on the roof. I don't even remember who leaned in first. I just remember his eyes, the way they locked on mine, not with lust, but with need. A need to feel something real again, something warm, something human. My hand reached up on its own, like it didn't ask permission from my brain. I touched his face just lightly. His cheek was warm, a little rough from the stubble, familiar but new at the same time. We weren't breathing. And then, right before anything happened, I pulled back, hard, like the moment had yanked me out of myself. I stepped away so fast, I nearly knocked over my glass. My chest was tight like all the air had been sucked out of the room. Tears welled up before I could stop them. I can't, I whispered. I have a family. My voice broke on the word family, because in that moment, it felt like more of a reminder than a truth. Everett didn't argue, didn't beg. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, nodding like he knew this was always how it would end. Then softly, almost like he was confessing something to himself. So do I, kind of. That hit harder than I expected. His divorce, his distance from his own daughter, the loneliness that clung to him even in a room full of people. He wasn't trying to justify anything, he was just saying it out loud. We were both lost, in different ways. I turned away and walked to the window. Rain was streaming down the glass in long, shaky lines. I pressed my forehead against the cold surface and tried to breathe. It felt like the room was spinning, even though nothing had changed, but everything had changed. Because we didn't cross the line, but we stood right on the edge of it, and now we had to live with the knowledge that we wanted to. That moment just almost left a mark deeper than any physical mistake ever could, because it wasn't just temptation, it was truth. And truth, once spoken, doesn't just disappear. I was still standing at the window, forehead pressed to the cold glass, trying to calm my breathing, trying to shove everything I was feeling back into the box it came from. Behind me, Everett hadn't moved. Neither of us spoke. The storm outside was still going strong, but the one inside me felt louder. And then, just as I was trying to piece together who I was again, The door creaked open. Thunder cracked so loud it rattled the windows, and just like that, we were snapped out of that moment, like someone had hit the emergency brakes on a moving train. My father, Gabriella Patrick, stepped inside holding 2 paper bags soaked from the rain. He looked confused at first, shaking off his coat, muttering about the weather, then froze when he saw Everett. And then, me. And then, the space between us. Nothing obvious was happening. We weren't close. We weren't touching. But everything was in the air. The vibe was too still, too charged. Gabriella looked at Everett, then at me. His eyes narrowed just a little, not suspicious, but knowing, the kind of look a parent gives when they don't need to ask the full question because the answer is already sitting heavy in the room. He didn't say much, just paused by the counter, set the bags down slowly, and asked with that low, careful voice, "You two okay?" It was such a simple question, but it hit like a punch. Everett cleared his throat and nodded quickly. "Yeah, all good." I opened my mouth, but no words came out at first. Then finally, with the fakest normal I could muster, just catching up, Gabriella held my gaze a second too long. He didn't call me out, didn't press, but I could feel it in his eyes. He knew something had cracked. And that right there, that silent moment, was the slap I didn't see coming. The spell broke. The air shifted. Everett stepped back like he suddenly remembered where he was, who he was, what line we'd both almost stepped over. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly aware of how quiet the room had become. The fire was still going, but it felt colder somehow. Gabriella turned and started unpacking the groceries, like nothing happened, but he didn't say another word. He didn't have to. His presence alone, unexpected, grounding, real, was enough to pull me out of whatever fantasy I had let myself sink into. And, for the first time that night, I didn't feel seen, I felt exposed. That was the moment I realized something chilling. It wasn't the kiss that would have ruined everything. It was the truth we almost let in, and now that it was out, no one could unknow it. Not even me. Everett didn't stay long after. He offered to help unpack the groceries, but Gabriella waved him off politely, the kind of gesture that says, "I got this, you should go." There were no harsh words, no big exit, just a quiet moment where Everett and I locked eyes. He didn't smile, I didn't either, but in that look, we said everything. He knew it. I knew it. We had stepped into something we could never fully undo. He gave a small nod, like a goodbye, but not just for the night, for the idea of us. And then he left. No hug, no see you later, just the sound of the door closing behind him, and the rain swallowing up the world again. I didn't say anything to my dad. I helped him put away the groceries in silence. He didn't push, just moved slower than usual, like he was waiting to see if I'd speak first. But I did, and when I got home later that night, the house was dark. Sergio had left the porch light on for me. I remember thinking how strange that felt, that after everything that almost happened, something as simple as a porch light could still feel like home. I crept into our bedroom. He was half asleep, turned on his side facing the wall. I crawled in next to him, careful not to wake him up. But after a few minutes, he stirred, rolled over, opened his eyes, and in that groggy, half-conscious voice of his, he asked, "You okay?" It was such a simple question, but it stopped me cold. Because no, I wasn't. I was carrying something now, a weight that didn't show on my face, but was everywhere inside me. A moment that didn't belong to the world, didn't come with consequences anyone else could see, but still felt like a betrayal of everything we'd built. And yet I said it anyway, because it was easy. Automatic. Like muscle memory. "Yeah, just tired." He nodded, barely awake, turned over, fell back asleep in seconds. But me? I stared at the ceiling for hours, frozen, eyes wide open in the dark. That was the first night I realized something I hadn't fully faced until then. This wasn't a secret I chose to keep. It was a truth that didn't belong anywhere. Not in our marriage, not in the world, and definitely not in the past. It didn't come with lipstick on a collar, or a phone full of texts, or anything you could point at and say this is the betrayal, but it was one. Not of action, of feeling, of looking at someone who wasn't my husband, and letting myself imagine what it might have been like if my life had gone another way. And even though I never touched him, never crossed the line, a part of me had already stepped over it. And now I had to live with it. After that night, I didn't see Everett for a while, not because he disappeared, but because I did. There were birthdays, family cookouts, random Sunday brunches. I made excuses, said the kids had colds, said I wasn't feeling well. Anything to avoid being in the same room as him, because even just the idea of being around him again made my chest tighten, not out of fear, but because I knew if our eyes met for even a second, it would all come flooding back. Not the fantasy of it, the truth of it, and I wasn't ready to carry that in public. Sergio never asked questions. He didn't notice the shift. Not really. Maybe a few side glances when I'd seem quiet over dinner, or when I'd flinch a little too hard when the boys knocked something over. But on the surface, life went back to normal, which honestly was part of the problem. Our marriage was still dry, still still functional, in that hauntingly empty kind of way, like a house where the lights still work, but no one really lives there anymore. But something had changed in me. I started journaling again, not because I wanted to write some dramatic confession, but because I needed to remember who I was when no one was looking. I started with small things. One sentence a night. I felt something today. I didn't raise my voice. I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't hate it. And then more. I almost lost myself in someone who reminded me I used to matter. It wasn't about the kiss we didn't share. It was about the part of me I forgot I had. I'm lonely. And I don't want to be. I even looked into therapy, quietly, private. Not because I felt guilty, surprisingly. I didn't. But because I knew if it was that easy to almost betray someone I built a life with, something inside me was screaming to be seen, heard, held, and I couldn't keep pretending that wasn't true. Then there was my mom, Gabriella Zimmerman. She saw something, of course she did. Mothers always know when their daughters are wearing a mask. One afternoon, she came over to drop off some clothes for the kids, and lingered a little longer than usual. She didn't ask questions, didn't pry. She just sat at the kitchen table with her tea, watching me shuffle around the room like I was looking for something I lost. Then, out of nowhere, she said, "Sometimes the hardest truth is the one we never speak." I froze, pretended not to hear, kept wiping the already clean counter like her words hadn't landed exactly where they were supposed to. She didn't say more, just gave me that look. The kind that doesn't ask, "What happened?" It asks, "Are you strong enough to face it now?" And honestly, I wasn't but I knew I wanted to try. Because even though Everett was gone from my day-to-day, that night still lived in the corners of my memory. Not like a secret, but like a mirror I couldn't avoid. And I had to ask myself, maybe for the first time in years, was I going to keep pretending to be okay? Or was I going to figure out what that moment, what that almost was trying to teach me? I wish I could say there was some big moment of redemption, some grand apology, a dramatic confrontation, a healing conversation that tied it all together, but real life doesn't work like that. Sometimes closure doesn't come from a door slamming shut. It comes from you quietly deciding not to open it again. Everett and I, we never talked about it. Not directly. There were moments at family events where our eyes would meet across the room, just for a second, and then look away. We never touched. Not physically, but that day, we touched something real, and we can't undo that. But we also didn't destroy anything. Not out loud anyway. And that's the thing no one tells you. The deepest betrayals, they're not always the ones that explode. They're the ones that whisper. Quiet little truths that sneak into your life and sit there, changing the way you see everything, even if nothing actually happened. It didn't burn my marriage to the ground, but it left a crack, and once you see the crack, you can't unsee it. That crack forced me to ask questions I'd buried for years, about who I was, about who I'd become, and about how damn easy it is to disappear in your own life when no one's really looking. So I stopped waiting to be seen. I started showing up for myself. I said yes to therapy. I wrote again. I stopped pretending that being a wife and mom meant I had to vanish. One night, months after everything, I was up late, everyone asleep. The house was still, And I pulled out my journal, this time not to vent, not to cry, but to tell a story. I titled it, The Almost. A story about a moment, a man, a marriage, and a woman who almost lost herself, but didn't. When I finished, I closed the journal and slid it into the bottom drawer of my nightstand, the one Sergio never opens. And I smiled, not because I had it all figured out, but because I was finally telling the truth, even if it was just to myself. So let me ask you something. Have you ever almost made a decision that would have changed everything? Not something you actually did, but something you thought about, felt, almost acted on? Drop it in the comments. No judgment here, because the truth is, we all stand at the edge of something at some point, and what we almost do can leave just as deep a scar as the things we actually do. If this story hit you even a little, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because around here, we don't do clickbait. We do real stories. Messy, complicated, human.